Paleontology, a science shrouded in mystery and intrigue, is notoriously difficult due to the nature of its subject matter, the study of extinct animals based solely on their fossilized remains. These remains can sometimes be barely intact, millions of years old, or both, making the work of paleontologists a challenging and complex endeavor. As a result, it's not uncommon for mistakes to be made in the field. While many errors are minor and easily corrected, there have been instances where mistakes have led to significant misconceptions about an animal's true nature, leaving many in the scientific community scratching their heads. This article will explore 7 such examples, demonstrating how the study of extinct creatures can sometimes lead to unexpected twists and turns. The first example is the Megalosaurus, the very first dinosaur ever described by paleontologists. This Jurassic theropod was first studied in 1824, a time when our understanding of dinosaurs was virtually non-existent. The holotype consisted of a femur bone, some vertebrae, and part of a lower jaw, which were studied by the English paleontologist William Buckland. Based on the size of the bones, Buckland concluded that he had stumbled upon a giant carnivorous lizard which walked on all fours. However, as larger dinosaur bones were discovered, Buckland increased his estimate of the Megalosaurus's size, eventually claiming that it measured over 70 feet in length. Interestingly, during this time, many scientists were still heavily religious, and they often tried to reconcile their findings with their beliefs. In the case of the Megalosaurus, Buckland attempted to address the issue of death and suffering before Adam and Eve by stating that the Megalosaurus was not a killer, but rather an animal specialized in ending the lives of the old and ill in order to lower total suffering and preserve the idea of original sin. Of course, this was a rather unorthodox solution, and it was eventually recognized that the Megalosaurus was not as giant as claimed, being about half the original estimate and weighing just slightly over 1 ton. However, the true nature of this theropod was slowly revealed through the discovery of other, more intact fossils, leading to the realization that the Megalosaurus was not quadrupedal, but rather bipedal and fully terrestrial. Mistakes in the field of paleontology are not limited to dinosaurs. In the 1980s, an Argentinian scientist discovered a peculiar fossil in Argentina's Bajo de Valles formation, dating back to the Carboniferous period. The fossil consisted of a large carapace, 3 appendages, and tergites, leading the paleontologist to believe that he had found an ancient spider. The spider was massive, measuring 34 centimeters or 13.3 inches long, which is greater than the maximum size seen in the Goliath bird-eater, who up until then had held the title of the largest spider to ever live. The timing of this discovery made sense, as it existed during the Carboniferous period, a time famous for producing giant, creepy crawlies. The fossil was dubbed Megarachne, meaning the great spider, and quickly turned into a fan favorite, appearing in museums, documentaries, and even stores. However, despite its popularity, there were a few skeptics, as Megarachne possessed some rather unusual features, even besides its size. For one, its carapace was divided into a front and rear section by a suture, and it also had a spatulate coelocere, a trait never seen before in other spiders. However, these concerns were swept under the rug, with people justifying that these differences were simply because it represented a new order of arachnid, or potentially just that it was simply one of a kind. In 2005, a second specimen was found, which instead of confirming the details of Megarachne, caused a lot of headaches. When analyzing this specimen, scientists noticed that its tergites and appendages were spitting images of those that belonged to another extinct genus, a sea scorpion. This revelation caused a significant shift in the understanding of the megarachne, as it was not a spider at all, but rather a sea scorpion. The misidentification of the megarachne is not an isolated incident. Another well-known example is the Therizinosaurus, a dinosaur whose name is synonymous with huge claws thanks to the Jurassic World franchise. However, it wasn't always thought of as the Wolverine dinosaur. In fact, it wasn't even originally classified as a dinosaur, but rather a turtle of all things. This misconception can be traced back to the 1940s, when a group of paleontologists discovered massive claw bones in a desert formation in what is now China. Oddly enough, the paleontologists believed that the theropod's body was unrelated to the claws, while the fragmentary bones were unsure of who they belonged to. One scientist, Evgeny Malev, came up with a rather interesting idea that these claws actually belonged to a giant aquatic tlaw, one that measured 4.5 meters or 15 feet long and weighed over a ton. However, it wasn't until the bones were re-examined by another paleontologist that the true identity of the Therizinosaurus was revealed. This paleontologist noticed that some other extinct animals had very similar claws, albeit many times smaller. He specifically compared it to Chilentosaurus, a possible Chinese neovenatorid, and thus leading to the new idea that Therizinosaurus was a dinosaur. And sure enough, this was eventually confirmed as more giant claws were located, along with additional material, which included part of this mysterious dinosaur's legs, arms, and ribs, among other parts. The Therizinosaurus is not the only dinosaur that has been misunderstood. Another example is the theropod, a dinosaur with a rather peculiar appearance that has been the subject of much debate among paleontologists. The theropod's discovery can be traced back to the late 1700s, when its fossil was found in limestone in Bavaria. Despite the completeness of this find, the first scientist to study it, Cosimo Caldani, still got a lot wrong. He reckoned that the theropod had to be a marine animal, as he was convinced that the Devonian was well known for harboring freaky creatures. He tried his best to explain how the theropod's features would have aided in aquatic locomotion, despite being able to tell that it really wasn't adapted for the water at all. It wasn't until the early 1800s that some started pointing out that this new creature had elongated bones to which a wing membrane may have been supported, comparing it to the elongated finger bones we see in bats. And while this was a significant step forward, it wasn't until the 1830s that basically every paleontologist caved in and admitted that theropods and pterosaurs in general were flyers, not sea creatures. Another example of a misunderstood animal is the Anomalocaris. Even today, with everything we know about this creature, it's still seen as an odd creature. I mean, just look at it. And you won't probably be surprised to hear it came out of a very strange time for life, the Cambrian, where it was actually a very important animal, being one of the largest animals of the era, and presumably one of Earth's first apex predators. Given both its unusual size for the time and features that indicated a carnivorous diet, it's not hard to see why the researchers first could entail that these fossils are presented not three, but one creature. With them, instead believing that the trunk represented a new type of sea cucumber, the appendages as shrimp, and the mouth, some kind of jellyfish. It wasn't until more specimens were found in the vicinity that it was realized that these fossils represented just one animal. The Anomalocaris is now known to be a member of the Radiodonta, an extinct order of stem group arthropods. Its odd appearance has kept it tied to one of these animals, as the Dolphyton being described is looking like a very strange shrimp. And sure enough, it was even given a name meaning the abnormal shrimp. In conclusion, The study of extinct animals can sometimes lead to unexpected twists and turns, as demonstrated by the 7 creatures discussed in this article. From the Megalosaurus, the first dinosaur ever described, to the Therizinosaurus, a dinosaur once mistaken for a turtle, to the theropod, a dinosaur once thought to be a marine reptile, to the Anomalocaris, a creature once thought to be 3 separate animals. The field of paleontology is full of fascinating examples of mistakes and misconceptions. It reminds us that the study of extinct creatures is not always straightforward, and that our understanding of these animals is constantly evolving as new evidence is uncovered. So, the next time you find yourself scratching your head over a seemingly strange or confusing fossil, remember that you're in good company. Even the most respected paleontologists have made mistakes in the past. But don't worry, as long as we continue to ask questions and seek answers, our understanding of the past will only grow.